Let me ask you about this, about retail politics, and about whether you all agree that Iowa, New Hampshire should go first. Because some would argue, particularly from Michigan and Florida and elsewhere, that given the internet and given the fact that we live in the 21st century and there's 24-hour cable, that this whole notion of retail politics is nice and quaint, but it's not necessarily specific to a small state like New Hampshire. Do you all agree that Iowa should go first and New Hampshire should go first? And I would think that from Iowa you're going to have a tough time.
If you're going to start with me, I'm going to say absolutely. I'm Secretary of State from Iowa. I'd like to go back and continue to be Secretary of State.
So you've made that clear.
But beyond,
so what do you really think
beyond
now?
all that, let's go back and look at the plans. You got the NAS plan. I wasn't around for the NAS plan. Iowa, New Hampshire. You have the Ohio plan. Iowa, New Hampshire. You have the Klobuchar-Alexander Lieberman plan. Iowa and New Hampshire. His plan put in North Carolina and South Carolina and Nevada.
You have the Michigan plan, and they don't get that.
The Michigan plan,
first go.
the Michigan plan is out there on its own. When you talk about Michigan and Florida, I really have to think if they'd have stayed where they were supposed to stay, and have been patient with this process, they'd have been the biggest players of all of them.
That's
they
really true.
would have been the biggest player, and might have made a big determination on whether Clinton or Obama was the Democratic nominee. So everybody wants to get to that front side, and outside of Michigan and Florida. Name me somebody, because I'll name you a list here.
Texas.
Texas. Let me read you a list real quick here. Let me read you this quick
And
list real quick.
this from your side of the aisle, by the way.
No, he's from Republican. But here, let me just name you a little list here. The Commission on Federal Election Reform. Jimmy Carter and former Secretary of State James Baker endorsed the plan. The Council of State Governments endorsed the plan. I'm talking about the NAS plan.
Right.
This kept Iowa, New Hampshire in the front end. The Washington Post, the USA Today, the Los Angeles Times, the Boston Globe, the Chicago Times. I can keep on going. Dallas Morning News, Denver Post. All these people talked about the retail politics of why Iowa and New Hampshire, and maybe you were in Iowa, but you in Iowa at all, Ron?
A bit, yeah.
The people that came there, and I've talked to on the media, leave there with this unbelievable look. They can't believe that this process works like this.
Right.
And there's so much passion among the people.
It's nostalgic, it's historic, it's all those wonderful things. It's also bitterly cold, by the way.
In both states.
In both states, right. And they might be more free speech in a warmer climate.
I wouldn't mind to have that little warmer climate myself.
Indeed, but do you all agree that this notion of retail politics is still apropos in the 21st century, particularly when someone like Barack Obama not only raised so much money, but organized so many people on the internet?
I tell you, retail politics sounds quaint until you go and experience it. I've campaigned in Iowa. I've campaigned in New Hampshire for various candidates, and when you actually see it happen, the vibrance, the sharpness of the questions from ordinary people of all walks of life really does say this is an important part of America.
Why can't you have that in Texas or New Jersey?
I probably don't agree with James on very many things politically, but I will agree with him on that. And Mike is, I was absolutely opposed to New Hampshire and Iowa going first. 20 years ago, I had the same attitude that a lot of people do, and a lot of people in the Republican Party. Why should Iowa? Why should New Hampshire? But I agree with James. Until you go to New Hampshire or Iowa and see the interaction between the voters and the candidates on a very small basis where the questions are tough. I mean, maybe they're experienced. They have so much experience in presidential politics that they're good at it.
I've seen it. I've seen it many times in many places, but I guess I'm not
You
convinced
can't get that in Ohio, and I'll tell you why. We have 8 major media markets. We probably mirror the nation as well as any state in the union. You have 8 major media markets in Ohio. The candidates virtually spent $60 million on the Democrat side. And they play to the media market, not to the voters. True, Obama had tremendous turnout of rallies in Ohio. I mean, probably broke records as far as attendance.
So isn't that retail politics on a small basis in each of those?
You know what the phenomenon was his ability to use the internet to attract those crowds and to bring them out. That was the new thing in politics of 2008. And it'll continue. I mean, both parties will get better at using the internet in the future, but that's still that face-to-face. I don't care how good you are on television or how good you are on the internet. That face-to-face contact with the voters is still important.
But don't you
Ron,
think they're
interesting factoid from the Republican Rules Committee. Bob is right. I remember him years ago adamantly opposed to New Hampshire and Iowa. I was pretty much opposed to it at one time myself. I thought that that was going to be perhaps the most contentious issue that I had to deal with when the Ohio plan was brought forth. We passed that on a voice vote. I am still astounded that that passed on a voice vote. There was virtually no disagreement. The National Committee man from Texas is very much opposed. So is California. I mean, there are some diehards, but the vote was not even close.
But why not pass the tradition around to other small states?
Particularly
Rhode
ethnically
Island,
diverse
Connecticut,
states.
South Dakota.
Which one?
Well, that's
Well,
why
we name 'em.
that's why we
Nevada,
added
South
South Carolina and Nevada.
We'll make them first.
I'll tell you what, they put Nevada in the mix, and Iowa had to come out and train them how to put the process on in Nevada, how to do the caucus. They hired Iowans to come out there. You know, when you go to the Indianapolis 500,
generous Andrew
tradition,
Unor there.
remember tradition and passion. You go to the Indianapolis 500, they don't hold it in Boston. They don't hold the Kentucky Derby in New York.
Right, they hold the Boston Marathon
well,
though in
they hold the
Boston.
Boston, they hold the
They hold the
Boston.
US Open in New York.
So
Tradition takes time.
So the point of the matter is, we're not talking about New Hampshire and Iowa, something that's new. We're talking about something that's been in place. And all the gentlemen here expressed, you have to go out there to see it. Now, I'm not so sure if I go to Delaware, I go to New Jersey, or wherever it's made, I go to Kansas, start knocking doors and talking about the presidential caucus or the presidential primary, that you're going to have people that are engaged on that same level. Can they get there? Yes.
Okay, I'm convinced.
I know what you mean. You mean if I go hold a rally in Philadelphia and there's 3,000 people there and I talk to 30 of them, isn't that retail politics? The difference is that there is an aura that has surrounded New Hampshire and Iowa that the media picks up on, that other people in the country understand, that makes a difference. And I think Nevada will get there. South Carolina is about in their third round going early with us, and they're clearly there.